write like a man. Use a typewriter.
Do you think, Adam, that because the Bible talks about like generational curses, but it also talks about generational blessings. Do you think your father's involvement in that has kind of on almost like a blood relation level seeped over into your life at all?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think it's a strong possibility, and I don't know. It always so. I'm sure it's the same over there, but when you go and you kneel for communion, you can either ask for the communion, or you can ask for a blessing.
Oh, okay.
And, and like the youngsters, normally get the blessing until they're confirmed, and then they get the communion thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember numerous times where I was stood in the line going up, and I'd actually not take the communion and take the blessing instead.
Really?
Mm.
Why is that?
The way it made me feel.
Conscience. Yep.
Yeah.
The way it made me feel, it almost felt like sometimes you'd be run down, worn down. It was almost like, I'm trying to think of the word, or a likeness to it. It was almost like, here we go, Star Wars metaphor coming.
Nice.
It was almost like the deflector shield coming back up.
Really?
On the Millennium Falcon. That's the way the blessing felt to me. It was almost like a yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That.
What is it about communion that feels so different than the blessing? Like, how does communion feel in relation to that?
So communion, when I was taking the communion, I would be thinking about God. Yeah. I'd be thinking about Jesus, thinking about God, the relationship and the way he's with us and church. But when I took the communion, I could never think of God. When I took the blessing, it was always family.
Oh, really?
And I always had this, don't get me wrong, I had the feeling of God overseeing that, if you like, as sort of like an overview.
Yeah.
But it almost felt like images of my grandfather would come in my head, my dad, my mum, my brother. And sometimes when I felt really low, I went for that blessing again.
Yeah. It's like a gulp in the oasis, in the desert, kind of.
And I think you might have touched on something with that sort of blessing and blood tie kind of thing with Dad, and maybe that's why.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
It's really hard to put it into words, but yeah.
That's so cool because that's such a far departure than how church works for us. We're so far removed from that kind of tangible, interactive kind of experience.
Yeah, well, that's because here, communion is not the centerpiece of a worship service. The service isn't oriented around, it doesn't build up to the moment of communion. It's something that, depending on your church, you might do. Some churches do it weekly, but most churches do it monthly or every quarter.
Or on Easter.
It is on the periphery.
Yeah.
Something you do occasionally to remember. It's not the foundation of what the service is about.
Yeah.
Really, the service in most non-denominational or evangelical churches, it all builds up to the sermon.
Yeah.